Hey, this is Mel, and you're listening to Conversations with America. And it's been quite a while since I have had the opportunity to sit down and chat with all of you who are listening to this podcast. Thank you once again for those of you who have taken the time to download this podcast. I really do appreciate it. And even if you did not download it, thank you for listening and retweeting, all those wonderful things. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. And unfortunately, I'm having some problems with my laptop. I had to send it in, and after it came back to me, the desktop app no longer works. So I'm having to make adjustments now to doing this podcast. So it's a bit different. But anyway, I have something that I do want to talk about on today, and this being February. Wow, cannot believe that the year is already in the second month. It's amazing. But anyway, it is February, and of course, most of us in the States know what that means. February means Black History Month. And of course, over the last few years, the idea of celebrating Black History Month has become quite controversial, to the point that people no longer really want to celebrate it. It's becoming quite vocal. Nowadays, people will ask, well, why do we have to celebrate Black History Month? Why can't we, just move it out of the way and just celebrate the way things have been? In the past, I don't know what past, but why is it such a big deal? And of course, I know I do have, I understand where some people are coming from and try to hear all points of view when we're talking about Black History Month. And there are a lot of questions that come up when you're having a discussion. And I think it's a wonderful discussion for those of us Americans to have. It's a wonderful discussion. I think when we have the discussion, however, we should have it with an open mind, especially those who are not Black, those who are basically mainly of European descent, or you think you are, because if you live in the South or even in the North, anywhere in the U.S., really in the North and the South, there's a possibility that just because you think that you are of European descent only, does not mean it's true, because, of course, for generations after slavery, we know that there were a lot of blacks who were light enough to pass as white people, and therefore they lived their lives in generations from there. And even in the 90s, there were people who, not in the 90s, but in the 1900s, I should say, there were individuals who were light enough to pass, and because of the civil rights movement and all of the issues that were happening still in America in the 90s, there were blacks who chose not to be black. They decided to pass, and from that point on, their generation and seed have lived as white people. So it's not always the fact that a person who thinks they're white is white. It's a tragic reality for some people, I know, but for those of us who clearly are of African descent and then of whatever other descent we are from, it is quite, and those of us who look like it, we're quite chocolatey. It's something we cannot deny, and most of us hopefully do not want to deny. But the question comes up, many questions come up about Black History Month. And of course, one of the things people would say, what is the purpose, of Black History Month? And the truth is, I think a lot of Republicans, conservatives, are not aware of the actual history of what we know as Black History Month. For one, it was started by a Republican. Well, that's kind of ironic, because most of the complaints about Black History Month, or those who have a great deal of questions, and sometimes those questions are legitimate, have no idea, and most of them are of conservative background, and they have no idea that it was a Republican who started what really was actually Black History Week. And it was started by a black, very staunch conservative, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who started it. And he took the week that was both the birthday of both President Lincoln and Mr. Frederick Douglass. He took that week and he put it in there because he felt it was a very symbolic time. And the whole purpose of him starting this celebration of culture and history was to bring to the forefront the significance of contributions that blacks had made in American history, and to promote family, and to promote culture, and to promote a pride in who people were, not to feel less than American because of the color of their skin. And that was the real purpose of starting Black History Week, which later became Black History Month. I believe in the 60s, it came along to be Black History Month. And so the whole purpose of it was to celebrate the fact that blacks had actually made contributions in the history of this country. And a lot of people are not aware that our contributions go all the way to the birth of this country. We were the first to die in the American Revolution. We helped design cities such as Washington, D.C., Chicago. We made great medical advances, but those things are not known and were not known at the time. We were not celebrated as being a part, black people were not celebrated as being a part of the American story. And so here comes this very staunch Republican, and he says, look, I want to help black people to understand that they are a vital force in this country. They're important. It changes the attitude when you realize that you have made a contribution to a country. You've made a statement. You have given your blood, sweat, and tears to something. It makes a difference in the way you see yourself. And so that was really the purpose. So it wasn't a liberal holiday that was started by liberals. It was a conservative thing. And the Republican Party actually supported him in that initiation of this celebration of contributions made by blacks in America. In fact, at our church, we no longer even use the term Black History Month. Instead, we call it the celebration of the contributions of blacks in American history. Now, I know it's a very long title, but the emphasis is on the fact that blacks have made contributions to the story of this nation. And so we are a vital part of this nation. So then the question would become, how do we shift the contribution of blacks in American history to be included in the teaching of American history? Because if you're a black student and you go to school and you open your textbook, very little of what you're going to see in the textbook of American history has anything to do with black people. Very little of it. Everything is white. In fact, American history is white. So people say, a lot of conservative Republicans and white people will say, well, can we have White History Month? Well, according to Dr. Woodson, whites had White History Year. There was no month, there was no day, there was no week. It was all white history. The history of this country was white. It had no color to it. It was all white. And so where whites would say, can we have White History Month? When you go to school, the honest to God truth, if we have an honest conversation, the truth is, parents, if you were to look at your children's book of American history, almost from beginning to end, it's probably 90% white. The only reason we need a black, or the only reason why there was a need for a Black History Month, was to bring to the forefront the contributions made by a very important segment of society. It was not to say that black people were better or black people needed this. No, it was simply to show the whole world, to show the people in this country, to show black people themselves that they had value and they were valuable to this country. So broaden your thinking before you criticize. Now, I don't have a problem with people who say, I don't want to celebrate Black History Month. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to. But before you criticize those individuals, maybe take the time to learn about contributions that were made by black people in this country. And the truth is, no, it should not be a month. There should not be a Black History Month. In fact, Dr. Woodson's whole point was that he was hoping for the day that there would not be a need for Black History Month. At some point, he felt that this country would advance so much so that the textbooks and what students would learn in this country would not be so white. It would be inclusive of the ethnicities that made up this country. And blacks would be one of those. So that when you would open a book, you would see that we were fighting in the American Revolution. We were fighting in the Civil War. We were not just hopeless slaves waiting to be delivered. We were actually fighting on both sides. And you know what? I would say this. If those who have a problem with Black History Month to the point that it just bothers you and irks you to no end, learn about blacks in the Civil War. Because what you would find, you would be able to help blacks who have a problem with the Confederate flag. If you were to learn about blacks who actually served in the Confederate Army, you would have information to share with blacks who say, well, the Confederate flag is a racist flag because it's an oppressive flag. Well, then you could go and you can say, well, these are the different regiments that were in the Civil War fighting for the Confederate side, not just for the Union, but fighting in the Confederacy. You could share that if you took the time to realize Black history should not be regulated or relegated to 1 month. It should be something we learn about all the time. And not only Black History Month, not only Black history should be what we learn about, but we should, as Americans, take the time and the opportunity to learn about the history, the inclusion of other ethnicities in our history. Because the truth is, American history is not white. It's not. It's full of color. It's beautiful. It's a rainbow. It has contributions from so many different ethnicities. But we don't include that in our textbook. And we almost become offended when textbooks need to be rewritten to tell the true history. And the truth is, we should, in America, we should feel comfortable to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, the beautiful and the ugly. And we should put all of the colors in there as they should be. What contributions did Native Americans make to this country? Not just when we talk about the Pilgrims. They did other things, but they have been relegated and pushed out of the history of this country. What about Jews in America? In fact, there's also a Jewish History Month. There's Hispanic History Month. And believe it or not, there is Irish History Month. Not only do we have those months, but we actually take time throughout the year, and there are celebrations to different ethnic groups in American history. It's set in the calendars yearly that we celebrate not only particular cultures, but the thing is, blacks have become the loudest at saying, we're going to make our history. We're going to tell our story because it's not just a white America. Now, I know there are some white dummies, or they call themselves white supremacists or whatever. I don't know what they should be called, but quite ignorant people. Because for one, I never understand how people who belong to white supremacist organizations use the Bible. It's like, that's the dumbest thing in the world. Why would you even use a book that's not about white people at all? It's a book about a Jewish God, Jewish people, Middle Eastern people, and African people. But we won't talk about that. But I think if you're going to be a white supremacist, you have to have a whole new book. Create your own book. Don't use the Bible, because it actually defeats the whole purpose of being a hater of non-whites. I just don't get that. But anyway, we have those ignorant people who, they don't want to know about any other contributions made by other ethnicities. But for the everyday good American who may have prejudices, we all have them in some way. We prejudge people. We prejudge this ethnic group. We prejudge that group, or we prejudge that social group, that social economic group of people, and we prejudge them, and that happens. But when we take the time to learn about where they're coming from, it changes how we interact with them, and it broadens our understanding of who they are and what they mean as American people. And so, while I understand that a lot of people do have this sort of hate relationship for Black History Month, I think we first should understand that it had a purpose, and that purpose was to bring the knowledge of the contributions that blacks had made in the history of this country to the forefront, so that it wasn't relegated to just a few pages in textbooks. That's my thought on the whole Black History Month thing. I hope one day we don't need to have Black History Month, and that we will be able to say, hey, America celebrates all of the cultures and the stories and contributions equally. And it's not just about what whites, Europeans, British people, German people, whoever, what they did, and the Irish, and the Irish were slave owners in the South, and the Germans were doing this. At some point, we're going to tell the story of America as it is. It has an ugly past, but it also has a beautiful past. And I think we need to share that the past that most of us know is not the only one that we should know about. We've got to branch out. We've got to move beyond where we've been. And we have to start teaching what real American history is. That one day we will not have a need for Black History Month or Jewish American History Month or Hispanic History Month, because we will include every ethnicity that has made a contribution to this nation in the history books, and not just a few pages. But they will fill up the pages in the chronological order and in the areas that they have made contributions. In technology, in medicine, in travel, in urban development, in cities, architect, all of the great things in military powers, all of the things that have become a part of the American story. At some point, we're going to be able to tell that story as it should be told, and we won't need to worry about hating Black History Month so much. Hey, that's it for Conversations with America. Hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday night. Look forward to talking with you again. There's some other things we need to talk about, and I think hopefully this will work. If not, I have to find some other way to do this, because I have a lot of things on my mind that I'd like to talk about. But anyway, go have a conversation. Talk about this very thing. Talk to people about what it means to celebrate American history. That's what we should call it. At some point, we will call it American history. So I'm looking forward to that day. Hey, you guys, love you so much. Take care. Hey, tell me what you think about this podcast. You can always let me know on Twitter at Global Relations. Love to hear from you. Or you can email me and tell me what you think. You don't like it. You disagree with me about the whole issue of American history and Black History Month. You can email me, thehbuzz@gmail.com. Or, as I said, you can tweet me at Global Relations. Take care. Have a blessed one. God bless you.